Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a dear friend of mine, Danielle Farage, who is incredible, is the Gen Z voice of our generation, of your generation. And I feel so blessed today to have her on to talk about how she got into her profession, what she's doing to spread her message, and really someone to listen to because she really is the voice, the messenger, the everything for the Gen Z generation. So, welcome, Danielle, today to the Passionate Professional.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're
I'm
welcome.
very excited.
I'm excited to talk to you too. So, I want to start with what is your passion? And can you explain to the audience what it is you do?
Definitely. And I'm sorry for the background noise if there is any. I'm at Meta right now, at Reels School. So I'm learning how to make reels and content from the people at Meta building the products. So very exciting. Um, but I am, yes, Danielle Farage. I am originally from New York City, born and raised. I'm 24. I'm a Gen Zer. And I like to call myself a work futurist. I dream of a world where everyone, regardless of age, of background, of what you look like, feels valued and supported and fulfilled, both in the workplace and in their work and also beyond. And so I think that there's a lot of people who are misunderstood and just don't get the chance to tell their stories. And I bring people together to talk to each other about not just our backgrounds and what makes us uniquely us, but also how do we create um, these more dynamic, more values aligned and equitable cultures where people do get the support that they need and do get the representation and their voices are heard. And I really try to use my voice to amplify the voices of Gen Z, of a generation that is largely misunderstood, like a lot of the ones before us, and really advocate for us both in the workplace and beyond. And I know that might sound vague, but realistically, I go in a lot of podcasts. I write a lot of interesting content that that leaders end up reading,
Yeah.
and that they take away from hearing about my story and what I've gone through as a Gen Z, and they maybe understand us a little bit more, and they're able to guide us a little bit more, or they're able to have a little bit less bias and more empathy. And so, yeah, I'm a community builder at heart, and yeah, I just love being the voice for our generation. I recently got chosen as top voice for Gen Z on LinkedIn, so that's exciting. And I guess it means that I'm being effective at it.
Absolutely. I love what you just said. I mean, what's coming up for me is that not only you're a disruptor to the status quo, to be honest with you, of how businesses have run. And we do need to really listen to you guys because you bring a lot of value and you're maintaining that and mandating that. So kudos to you for that. So that's amazing. So how old were you when you decided, like what brought you onto this journey of wanting to do this? Were you in careers where it's like, oh, they freaking don't like get me, or like, no, I'm not going to be sitting in this cubicle till 5? Like what was brought up to you? How did you get on your journey so that other people might think, I want to get out of this job and do what you're doing, or.
Yeah, I actually get asked all the time, to talk to people's friends, to talk to my friends, right? And to, give them a little bit of perspective as to like, how do I get more flexibility into my work? How do I go from, point A to point B? And I end up giving people a lot of different sort of not just guidance, but also resources for like, this is what I would do if I were in your situation. And I think it's important to highlight that like not everyone's situation is the same. Everyone goes through sort of these different challenges. But in that, there's a lot of, connectivity. And I'm sure you understand this with the work that you do, Deborah, which is that, there are definitely things that you can do from the inside, right? It's a lot about inner strength. So I just want to say that. Secondly, I think that, my journey started when I was really young. I have two older siblings. We all went to the same school. We did largely the same extracurriculars. I sort of felt like anything that I did differently up until I graduated high school probably was like weird. Or like, it was just like I wasn't comfortable being different. And then I went to college and I started to realize that the things that made me different were actually the things that made me me and made me unique. And I started to lean a little bit more into that. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, I saw my siblings go and work these corporate jobs after college, right? And my brother went into, the entertainment industry. My sister went into tech sales. And I looked at their lives and I sort of looked around me and I was like, okay, what the heck am I going to study, right? What the heck do I want to do with my life? And I looked around me for like that inspiration. And a lot of the time, I just heard a lot of, if I were to ask someone, why are you going into this? Or why are you studying medicine? Why law? Why real estate? It was a lot of, oh, because my parents did it. Or, oh, because, my parents told me it's the right thing to do. Or, oh, because, I think once I do this thing for 2 years, then I can really do what inspires me and what I'm interested in. And I'm like, what a waste. And I saw my siblings at the end of that road, right? I was talking to people at the beginning and people at the end. And I was like, yeah, but it doesn't seem like that's really what I want for myself. And so in the process of trying to find my own path and follow my intuition that had led me to this point, I said, I'm gonna try to figure out what it is that I care about. And I felt like the thing that was staring me right in the face was this disconnection between what people expected, right, around me, my peers, what they thought, working would feel like and look like, and reality, which was that in a lot of these organizations, people were largely misunderstood. They were they were not consulted about, company-wide decisions. They had no say, right? And a lot of the time that actually impacted young professionals the most. We're the most likely to be taken advantage of. Our time, our expertise in social media. I mean, I could go on, right? And we're largely underpaid. And so I felt like that was the problem. That was the problem that I said, you know what? I want everyone to be able to find fulfillment and find joy every single day when they wake up. And I refuse to believe that, you have to be really miserable in a job. I feel like cultures is really the most important thing. And I just felt like a lot of the corporate culture was broken and it was breaking people.
Love
So
that.
that was how I found the problem.
Wow. So how did you go and set out in this particular, like, so you really found a gap in the marketplace
Right.
that seems like really needed to be filled, and your voice has really filled it, Danielle. So
Thank
how
you.
have you gone about, for people listening, how did you go about doing that? Like, what was your strategy? How did you kind of get into that?
Yeah. So this is sort of where it gets interesting. So I realized that, you know, the one thing, the one skill that you really need to manage people and to, get in touch with them is communication. You need
Mhm.
to be able to talk to people, to relate to them, to understand them, to understand their needs, wants, desires, and what makes them light up. And I figured, I have a background in psychology. I decided to go into social sciences with a psychology emphasis as my major and minor in media economics entrepreneurship. And I know that is all over the place. But essentially, this interdisciplinary approach to learning was one that I loved. It was one that, I felt like when I was taking a gender studies class, I could relate what I was learning to my communications and my business and my marketing classes. And I think it just really helped me. And the point of that focus in school was I wanted to be able to walk into any room, talk to anyone about anything or whatever interested them, and then take what I learned back to the boardroom and help them make better decisions about people, about the people they were leading, that they were guiding, that they were connecting with. And I felt like that sort of set up this foundation. And here's where it gets interesting. Okay. My senior year, before COVID, so in 2019, at the end of the year, I met an entrepreneur who was working on a problem that I was really passionate about. She was helping college students find career paths that were relevant to them based on their skills, interests, abilities, and all that, and what they were interested in. And a few months later, after I started working with her, it was just like, a small team. COVID happened and I was forced to, go back to New York. I didn't say bye to my college friends. I missed out on all the hurrah of senior year. And what happened was I found myself in a toxic workplace culture. Exactly the thing that I tried so hard to avoid. And it's just crazy because it just shows, it can happen to anyone. So, if you right now listening to this, right, are going through, what you think is a toxic culture where, your boss is putting you down. I mean, I had, my boss was telling me you're entitled because you went to USC and, you're the interns who I was leading a team of 10 interns, unpaid, by the way. If you are working an unpaid internship and not getting credit for it, that's literally illegal. So it was just like an unpaid internship. It was just like so ethically wrong. And I'm not a yes person. And that's what really my boss was looking for. And so when I showed up and like gave my opinion, she didn't like that. And I would not cater to, and I would not change myself. That was really at the heart of it. Over the years, I just seen so many of my friends changing themselves and studying for, months and months to fit the mold of McKinsey or fit the mold of, big tech or fit the mold of, someone who's working in banking. Like, why change yourself? And that was when, and I ended up quitting that job. And we can go into that if we want to, but at the top of my pros and cons list was, mental health. And I knew that if I stayed that I would just not be okay. And so that's when I left, and I found a job 3 weeks later through networking. And yeah, I think that at the end of the day, that experience of going through a toxic culture and then 3 weeks later landing a job at an amazing culture showed me that Gen Z is like being taken advantage of, like people are being taken advantage of, but I wanted to be the voice of reason, the voice sort of speaking for us and advocating for us, because I wasn't working in these big companies because I could say whatever I wanted mainly and not be, fired for it. And I found an organization that wanted to hear my voice, that wanted to amplify me and wanted to give me opportunities to run communities and to interact with HR and DI and, and just amazing professionals leading the workplace. So that was really, anyway, I say that to say my journey has been a crazy one, but I think I've learned really to just follow your intuition, and to never sort of give up who you are and to adjust to what someone else's standards or expectations of you are.
100%. And Danielle, what's coming up for me is that here you have that intuition of wanting to be the voice, but like God or whoever, said, okay, you want to really say that? Here, I'm going to put you in a toxic environment so you can push through that status quo to see who you really were. It tested you and you came out with flying colors to find that other career that really then embraced who you were. So it's kind of kismet or universe or whatever, but that is so cool. I love that. So in your particular industry, What can you advise other people listening to this, what they can do? What are like the 5 things or whatever that you have found for yourself that it takes to succeed in just what's paramount to succeed as a Gen Zer today?
Sorry, hold on one second.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay. No worries.
tips.
Yeah. So what is like, in a particular industry or what you found in different industries, what could you, because you were saying like finance and banking and whatever, and right, these kids come out and they're following everybody else, and then they get in there and it's like, I don't want to wear a suit or I don't want to do this. What do you feel it takes as a Gen Zer to succeed in business today?
Sorry, there's just a lot of background noise.
That's okay. I can't hear anything, so it's okay.
Okay. I think that to succeed in business today, I'm going to start with one that's like, I think really important, personal brand.
Yeah.
So you have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. And this is actually something I said, yesterday on a panel, and also Tuesday at this event that I hosted in person, really about the intersection of future work and creators. So personal brand has been a really big part of my career. And so when I got that job at that startup that was a really positive culture, it was a really big shift of like, oh, okay. So I just went through this crazy situation and now I'm in this really amazing situation. The juxtaposition was just kind of like insane. And it took me a couple months to process it. And then in December of 2020, I really started to share on social media, you know, here's what it's like to, you know, work with a toxic boss. Like, here are the signs, right? And I started to share more like educational content for like students, like, here's what to look out for. I started writing a book about, how to evaluate cultures. And I really started to like speak a lot more about my story. I started to own that. And I think that, it all goes back to, I was building a personal brand around what does a positive culture look like? And then that extended to and eventually became, what does a positive leader look like? What does a positive leader look like in the context of a positive culture, right? And how do you create that for Gen Z specifically? And I think that that's one, like finding your own personal brand. And I would say, like, your personal brand can get you hired, your personal brand can sometimes get you fired, likely not, but it can. And I also think that, like, if you are sort of, you're one of those people who like gets to LinkedIn and you're like, what the heck do I post? I think that I would say to you, you know I would say, spend time sort of looking at other people, spend time looking at my posts, see if that
Oh, yeah.
speaks to you. Spend time, on LinkedIn, just kind of consuming and also interacting in the comments with other people's posts. And I think that over time, your voice sort of starts to, your opinion, the more comfortable you get sharing it, starts to shine through.
Mhm.
And it starts to make a little bit more sense, like, oh, that's what I stick for, oh, that's what speaks to me. And I think that just through the action of commenting on 5 people's posts a day, that can really like start to help you find your brand. I think the second thing that I would say is just don't be afraid to be authentic. I think that, between mental health struggles and between, the wars going on in the world, and just all the chaos around, if you live in a city, the noise, right? Like, things can be overwhelming. And I've realized that vulnerability really does attract this audience that is able to see you for who you are. And recently I opened up about my mental health. This is actually a good story. I posted online, about a month ago. I was really going through a darker period, and I'm still not out of it 100%. But the point is that I had the bravery to sort of post and say, hey, I'm not okay, and this is the commitment that I'm making to myself, right? 30 days of movement, 30 days of breath work, and sharing that. And the amount of response that I received was overwhelming. The amount of messages, from my LinkedIn community, which I've been cultivating, right? That comes out of sharing, was just heartwarming, and I felt really supported. And on top of that, I show up to work the next day, right, on Slack, because I'm a remote first worker, and my coworkers in France are just like messaging me like, hey, I just want to say, like, I struggle with this too. I'm here if you want to talk. Like, oh, feel free to take the day off. Like, you take as much time as you need. And it just kind of showed, and I think this speaks also to the European culture, like,
Hmm.
people care. People care, and people want you to prioritize yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the only one that can do that, right? And I think that if you're feeling burnt out, if you're feeling unmotivated, if you're feeling misaligned, like, there's a root cause to that. And I think a lot of the time we're taught to, like, treat the symptoms. But realistically, like, the root cause for me was I wasn't prioritizing my health. So I would say, yeah, don't be afraid to be authentic. I think third, build a really strong community. And I think it's sort of two. So it's one, build a strong community of friends, your family, people that you can really lean on and be your authentic self with, especially if you're, going through career changes. Like, a lot of the time when you're going through more than one big change at a time, it can feel really overwhelming. I'm going through that right now, right? But I'm talking to people about it. I'm being upfront and open and honest about what I'm going through, so that other people, can maybe offer me suggestions or guidance, or just, a kind word. And I think secondly, this is really big, and this has been huge for me, is like finding a group of friendtors, a group of people who really are, I think the best mentorships turn into friendships, and the best friendships have an element of mentorship to them. We covered sort of that friendship side of, like, you look to your friends for guidance 100%, but what about in the professional context, in your career? If you have friends who maybe aren't in the same industry, or aren't doing, like, similar things to you, or maybe you want to learn from, then find the people that you do want to learn from. Find the people who, like, have the careers that inspire you, that, like, can give you that guidance. And I like to call that friendtorship. And essentially it's just the combination of, like, how do we reimagine mentorship so that it's both ways. I like to think, Deborah, that you and me are friendtors. I learn from you and your coaching, and you're probably learning a lot from me on this call, and
100%.
vice versa, right? And I think it's just a beautiful thing to be able to say, you know, without the pressure of mentor, right? I don't
Yeah.
have to call you my mentor. You don't have to call me yours. We're in a friendtorship, you know?
You know what, Danielle, I just have to interject that because, oh God, you're blowing me away, as I'm sure you're blowing everybody away right now. But you're really going kind of old school for me as I'm listening to you. I have to just say this. I was at the US Open with a friend that I started with at Escada 40 years ago. And we were working together, and we have been friends. She's now a president of a company. And I've just asked her to be on this Passionate Professional, not because she's a friend of mine. The best friends I've ever made, and I've got a lot of different groups, are the friends that I've worked with. And I think, and I love that you're kind of bringing back the old school of that kind of friend and renaming it friendship, which I think is freaking brilliant, because that is where our livelihoods become. Those are the people that become family and friends and working together. And there's nothing like it in the world if you can own it, which you are, and it's brilliant. Just
Thank you.
Gotta give a shout
Yeah,
out to you.
100%. And my mom this past weekend, I spent the weekend with my mom's, old boss from when she worked in software sales. And, now this woman is traveling the world with her husband and they live in Spain. And like, my mom is reevaluating her own life, right? Like, where does she want to live? What does she want to do? And I think it's just really helpful to be able to look to these people who you learned from in the past and be able to learn from them in new and different ways. And so those sort of friendships, friendships evolve just like mentors evolve. And I think it's sort of the same thing. And I also want to say that it highlights the importance of having friends who are of different ages than you.
Yeah.
Because when I showed up in New York and I was sitting on my couch in 2020 in September, and I was like, what the heck am I doing? It was like looking for a job at the time. And I just remember thinking, like, who are my friends?
Mhm.
What is my network? And just started reaching out and like joining communities and like going on Clubhouse and using different apps to meet people. And there was a moment where I was kind of like, why am I treating people who are older differently? Like, why don't I share more wins with them around, like more about like my love life or more about my personal life or what I'm going through emotionally? Like, why don't I start to open up about that to them? Because I'm sure that they've been through similar things and could probably offer a different perspective. And I think also in the workplace, right? If you transfer that, like finding a friend at work who you can open up to and be your authentic self with, then creates an environment where if that person is at the office, then you want to go be there, right? It gives you a reason to participate. And it also gives them, right? Like if you're really well versed in social media and they're not, and you really want to learn about strategy but you're not well versed and they are, it's like there's an opportunity for you two to collaborate. And I think that's happening a lot less these days. And I think there's, friendships are like a good opportunity for that to really happen.
Correct. I think it's going back to your authenticity too, that you're being authentic in the relationship aspect of it. It's not to get bigger or, to step on anyone's toes, but it's really like Supergirl power. It's really to embrace one another so that you both win or everybody wins in that case. I love that. Any words of wisdom for the people, the passionate individuals like yourself who are out there who believe that their passion deserves a shot? What would you say?
Yeah. So I had this really interesting conversation with my mom last or 2 nights ago. And she was saying, just talking to some of my friends and, at the event and also just, her observations. She said to me,
Hmm.
Danielle, like, do you really think that your passion needs to be your career? Like, if you have this really successful path and you're, not really feeling inspired or fulfilled by it, can't you find that outside of work? And and what I said to her was like, Mom, that's totally possible. However, I think that too many people have made their job what they're passionate about for anyone who sees that to be able to settle and to say, I don't need to do that. And some people totally ignore that, right? Some people are like, oh, career coach, what the heck is that, right? I'm sure like that stigma is out there, but at the same time, you can't you can't shy away from passion. When it's there, it's like right in your face and it won't leave you alone ever. So you can't really ignore it. Is my opinion, especially when other people, who maybe you open your Instagram and it's like it's all about career coaching, and then you're like, oh, I could have said that, and I'm facing the same thing. It's like I'm, still working a 9 to 5, and it's not really a 9 to 5, but it's like, it's a full-time job and it's flexible, thank God, because that's really what I want. And at the same time, it's like, well, I also find a lot of joy in helping people with their career paths. And I also find a lot of joy, speaking. And I also find a lot of joy writing. It's like, okay, if you're one of those people, kind of like me, who like, I don't really get to do a lot of this stuff at my job. I create time for it outside of my job. And so if you're in that boat, I think that even if it's like two totally different things, there are definitely ways to integrate your career and what you're passionate about. There's ways to bring that in. If you're passionate about, environmentalism and you want to go save the sea turtles, well, you can work for a company that is contributing to that cause in a major way, or ocean conservatory, or a lot of these environmental causes that like social impact is like big. It's not like it's like volunteers anymore. There's like real venture capital money backing startups, and there's a lot of innovation happening in the space. Go get involved in it. And if you're feeling like you want two separate totally different things, make time for it on the side. Start, I'm not a big fan of the word hustle, but a side hustle, a side project that just gives you joy. And for me, I'm still trying to find those activities. I started to take up tennis. I when I settle down in Williamsburg, hopefully in a couple months, I want to buy a sewing machine because I love sewing, and I want to, do some of the things and return to some of those things that like really just give me joy and like aren't for, to make money.
Exactly. Oh, you are something else. Danielle, can you share with my audience how they can reach you? Or because with all due respect, you'll be getting like bombarded now. How they can reach you, what your handles are, etc.
Yeah, totally. So you can find me. I write a lot on LinkedIn, just
Do.
Danielle Farage on LinkedIn, and also on Instagram. That's my handle. On Twitter, I post like a little bit different content, but it's more like startup Web3, yeah, that kind of stuff. And my title is Hybrid Futurist. And yeah, I have a website and it's under construction. It's just my name.com. I would also want to like leave just one of the quotes that like, or ideas that I've been really loving lately. And I think would be fitting here is like, if you think about the word evolve, right? We're always evolving as human beings. And if you think about the word and you actually spell it out, the word love is spelled backwards in the first part of the word.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah. So it's just sort of a reminder to, love ourselves as we evolve throughout this process of finding, whether it's finding what you're passionate about or it's transitioning to figuring out and getting a job in that area, or you're in college or you're like just kind of feeling totally lost. Loving yourself through that process is like so important, and prioritizing yourself and your health could not be, I can't stress that enough. That's definitely been a huge focus of mine, especially the past 2 months. And yeah, I felt like that was a good way to end things.
It is, but you know what? It's a way to end things, but it's only the beginning of allowing people and bringing people into your world, babe, that are going to be able to evolve because of what you shared today. So I want to thank you so much. I'm so excited to see you again. I play tennis too, so we'll have to do that, by the way. And thank you again for sharing yourself with us today. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye.